was July 1900. Stark County had grown from a population of 52,000 residents 30 years earlier to 95,000. Horse-drawn trolley cars were being converted to electricity. Incorporated businesses had recently jumped from 9 to 70. We had a new courthouse. Our attorneys were prominent in the national and state governments. William McKinley, a former Stark County prosecutor and Ohio governor, was in the White House after conducting his successful front porch campaign from Canton. He would soon fall to an assassin's bullet. William R. Day, a local attorney, was serving on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit after having recently served as a U.S. Secretary of State and a leading architect of the peace treaty with Spain. He would become a U.S. Supreme Court Justice in 1903. Atlee Pomerane, a Princeton graduate, was the Stark County prosecuting attorney. In 10 years, he would become Ohio Lieutenant Governor and a U.S. Senator in 1911. Ohio attorneys had formed a state bar association 20 years earlier. Many of our attorneys were locally schooled and/or apprenticed. The chairman of the committee who drafted the Constitution and bylaws of the Stark County Bar Association was C.C. Bowe, father of Frank T. Bowe, a future U.S. congressman. The first president of the Stark County Bar Association was Civil War veteran Colonel James J. Clark. Dues were $2 per year. The initial annual meetings took place at Myers Lake and Congress Lake. Who could have foreseen that the Stark County Bar Association would grow to several hundred members by the year 2000?
Good evening. My name is Louise Strong, and I have been asked to address you as fellow members of the Stark County Bar Association on what it has been like in my first year of the practice of law as the first woman attorney in Stark County. I was admitted to practice last year, 1916, and I can tell you that the experience has been thoroughly rewarding, sometimes overwhelming, and never without a challenge. I became interested in law after graduating from Alliance High School in 1908 and then Mount Union College, when I then became a legal secretary with Hart and Kohler. I was fascinated by the practice and the people, and I wanted to become more involved and have even greater responsibility. Although I must say that behind every great lawyer is a great legal secretary. The members of the law firm at which I was employed helped me read and study the law, thereby enabling me to be admitted to the practice. I have occasionally faced some difficulties from my male peers, but most have come to accept me and appreciate my hard work, dedication to the profession, and skill in handling cases. I am frequently asked about those hardships and those who have had difficulty accepting a woman as an attorney. Many are shocked to discover that after arriving at the office in the wee hours of the morning, I make the coffee. This is not because I am required to or expected to do so by my gentlemen peers because I am a woman. It is, however, out of necessity. My gentlemen peers make lousy coffee. It is curious to me that I practice law every day, a profession based on the Constitution as well as the laws of the state of Ohio. Yet I do not have the right to vote. Over 25,000 women recently marched in New York, demanding the right to suffrage. Perhaps in the near future, these women will be heard, and this right extended to us. I am proud to be an attorney, proud to be a member of the Stark County Bar Association, and will be proud to be able to further this country by participating in the election of those in government.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this regularly scheduled broadcast to bring you the latest development on the July 16, 1926 murder of Don R. Millett, manager of the Canton Daily News. As you recall, Mr. Pat McDermott was taken into custody October 24, 1926, as a suspect in the Millett murder. Today, December 13, 1926, Judge Edwin W. Deal began the trial with opening remarks from Prosecutor McClintock. Mr. McClintock had this to say.
Don R. Millett was the manager of the Canton Daily News of this city. He was killed on the 16th day of July of this year. Prior to that date, for a considerable time, his newspaper made attacks upon bootleggers in this city. In his attacks, he called various parties by their names. Amongst them were Louis Mazer, Carl Stutter, and others. He also in his paper condemned the fact that certain bootlegging activities were receiving the protection of certain members of the police department. This we will show you. And that very evidence will prove to you that that was the motive of the crime.
This trial has turned the city of Canton topsy-turvy. Embroiled in the aftermath of the murder is Mayor Stanford M. Swartz, Chief of Police Lengel, and Civil Service Commission Chairman Price Jensen. Defense Attorney E.L. Mills headed the McDermott Council and said this in his opening statement.
I want to say this to the jury, however, that the shot fired on the early morning of the 16th of July that stilled the life of Don Armolette was an aftermath of a series of abuses. Newspaper articles in his paper concerning many persons and things in the vicinity of Canton and Massillon. The victim has been referred to in many instances as a militant editor, the purpose of which was to increase the circulation of the newspaper of which he was editor and to gain control of the government of Canton. No doubt there will be introduced many articles he published, and you will hear that a large number of persons were referred to. I'm not saying this to you to justify his killing, but I'm only bringing this to your attention on the question of motive.
As we listen, there are already 2 additional men under arrest for this murder. Those being Ben Rudner, a known bootlegger, hardware store and brothel owner, a certain restaurateur, Louis Mazer, and Canton Detective Floyd Streitenberger. Where this will end and whom else will be affected, only the future will tell.
Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you smell a dime? Once I built a tower to the...
Over 15 years after Louise Strong addressed you, fellow members of the Stark County Bar Association, as the first woman attorney in Stark County, I have been asked to do the same. I have been asked to reflect on my first year as the first woman to serve on the municipal court bench in Alliance. I graduated from Mount Union College in 1917, the year after Louise Strong was admitted to the bar. Her efforts and courage in becoming the first woman attorney in Stark County paved the way for me, and those women who will join us as members of the bar in the future. I truly enjoy life on the bench, although I must say that many of those who appear before me, attorneys and clients, are surprised to see me. On my first day on the bench, I was approached in the hallway by the 2 out-of-town attorneys who were to have a jury trial that day. Both forcefully handed me their business cards and admonished me to transcribe the proceedings accurately, since their clients had a great deal at stake. I smiled, took the cards, and assured the attorneys they would be taken care of. A few minutes later, my bailiff escorted the attorneys into my chambers to address pretrial matters. The expression on the attorneys' faces I will never forget. By the way, for some reason, the case settled shortly thereafter. As the decision maker, however, I have received tremendous respect and have been shown tremendous professionalism from the attorneys that practiced before me, traits that have been prevalent throughout the members of this bar association from its inception. These years in the 1930s are not easy for us. The Depression is upon us, and nowhere is that more evident than in the daily life of someone involved in local government. I often see good people at their worst, struggling to keep families afloat. I am confident, however, that we will overcome the battle before us, and Stark County will prosper and continue to grow and develop as our fine bar association has and will do in the future.
McKinley School of Law was established in Canton in 1926 by the Stark County Bar Association. It held classes at the McKinley building that William McKinley built in Canton, Ohio. It served as the source of legal education for many Stark County attorneys until July 1955, when the school was closed.
As a follow-up to the Millette murder investigation and trials, our correspondents have the following to report. McDermott's trial lasted 15 days after the jury was seated. Closing arguments were given on Christmas Eve, 1926. The jury got the case at 4:29 p.m. and returned a verdict of guilty 45 minutes later. When the verdict of guilty was returned, McDermott rose from his chair, grabbed his lawyer's hands, and said, "Gee, they were fast." They found the defendant, Patrick Red McDermott, guilty of first-degree murder with a recommendation of mercy. On January 12, 1927, McDermott was sentenced to life in prison with no parole. And while serving his sentence, McDermott escaped twice, eventually being transferred to Lima State Hospital, where he died in 1972.
Louis Mazer confessed and became a state's witness March 5, 1927. Mazer helped convict Canton detective Floyd Streitenberger. As a result, Mazer was charged with the lesser crime of manslaughter. And after the prosecution recommended leniency, Mazer received a 5 to 25-year sentence. Mazer received parole after serving 5 years in the Ohio State Penitentiary. He returned to Canton, where he lived and operated a diner on Canton's east side until his death in the late 1950s.
Ben Rudner was tried next. He had a solid alibi for the night of the murder. However, the state had witnesses placing him together with other defendants for several days before the murder. Rudner was found guilty of second-degree murder February 23, 1927, and was sentenced to life in prison. He spent the remainder of his life in the state penitentiary, dying of cancer in 1949.
Detective Floyd Streitenberger, with the force for 12 years, was convicted of first-degree murder for his role in the murder, which included providing the getaway car and driving same. He then implicated Police Chief Lengel and received a recommendation of leniency. Streitenberger spent the remainder of his life in the state penitentiary, where he died in November 1962.
Police Chief Lengel, known to have hated Millett, was accused by Mayor Swartz of purposely failing to make an honest investigation of Millett's murder and of associating with known underworld members. He was convicted of first-degree murder. However, after a successful appeal and a retrial in another county, he was acquitted. He returned to Canton as police chief, immediately resigned, and received his pension.
Seems like old times when we have a bar show.
The Onion Club, of course, has been somewhat in a bit of a hiatus for a number of years now, with the most recent one being 2 years ago. The one prior to that was in 1984, and of course the Onion Club was held for quite a number of years, going back to the early part of the 20th century. The earliest materials that we were able to find, thanks to Mary Ellen Mistel, were from 1936. We found some programs, some photographs. We would like to give you a taste for what the Onion Club was like back in the mid-30s, and then jump ahead a little bit to the 1960s and 1970s.
Seems like old times when we have a bar show. Seems like old times when we have a bull throw where we faces red. When we start to remind you of past deeds, you thought we were all behind you. Seems like old times throwing jabs at judges. Seems like old times to give ourselves some nudges, making fun with you, just like we used to do. Seems like old times being here with you. Seems like old times when we have a bar show. Seems like old times when we have a bull throw. There'll be faces red when we start to remind you of past deeds you thought were all behind you. Seems like old times throwing jabs at judges. Seems like old times to give ourselves some nudges, making fun with you, just like we used to do. Seems like old times